On the morning of September 17, 1944, the sky over southern England filled with the deep, rolling sound of aircraft engines. Thousands of men stood quietly beside their gear, waiting for a mission that promised to end the war by Christmas. The plan looked bold, fast, and brilliant on paper. It was meant to break Germany in one sudden blow. But hidden inside that confidence was a warning that had already been seen, already been reported, and quietly set aside. What followed would become one of the most painful lessons of World War II. This is the story of Operation Market Garden, and the warning Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery chose to ignore. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. By late summer 1944, the war in Western Europe seemed to be turning into a race. After the Allied breakout from Normandy in July, German forces were retreating fast across France and Belgium. Cities like Paris, Brussels, and Antwerp were liberated in quick succession. Many Allied soldiers believed the enemy was finished. Morale was high. The problem was not German resistance, but distance. The Allied armies were moving faster than their supplies. Fuel trucks drove day and night along narrow roads from the Normandy beaches. Ammunition, food, and spare parts lagged behind. Every commander knew that speed without supply could turn victory into disaster. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery, commander of the British 21st Army Group, believed he had the solution. Montgomery was careful, proud, and deeply confident in his own judgment. He did not like spreading forces thin. Instead, he wanted one strong thrust straight into Germany. His idea was simple in concept, but risky in execution. Airborne troops would drop deep behind enemy lines to seize key bridges in the Netherlands. Then ground forces would race north along a single road to link up with them. If it worked, the Allies would cross the Rhine River, bypass the German defences known as the Siegfried Line, and strike directly into the industrial heart of the Reich. The plan was given the name Operation Market Garden. Market referred to the airborne part. Garden referred to the ground advance. Montgomery presented it as a narrow, powerful punch that would end the war quickly. He argued that the Germans were beaten, disorganized, and unable to respond. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower approved the plan, though with some doubts. Time was short, the weather was still good, and the promise of a quick victory was hard to resist. The airborne phase was massive. It involved over 35,000 men from 3 divisions. The US 101st Airborne Division would land near Eindhoven to seize bridges along the Wilhelmina Canal. The US 82nd Airborne Division would drop near Nijmegen to capture bridges over the Maas River and the Waal River. The British 1st Airborne Division, supported by the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade under Major General Stanisław Sosabowski, would land near Arnhem. Their objective was the most critical bridge of all, the road bridge over the Lower Rhine. If Arnhem held, the door into Germany would open. On the ground, Lieutenant General Brian Horrocks commanded XXX Corps, the spearhead of the advance. His armoured columns would drive north from the Belgian border along Highway 69, later known as Hell's Highway. The entire plan depended on speed. Every bridge had to be taken intact. Every airborne unit had to hold until relieved. Any delay could collapse the whole operation. But before the first plane took off, there were signs of danger. The warnings did not come from rumours or fear. They came from solid intelligence. British photo reconnaissance flights over the Arnhem area had spotted armoured vehicles. Tracked shapes sat beneath trees and camouflage nets. Analysts identified them as German tanks. Reports suggested that elements of the II SS Panzer Corps were refitting near Arnhem. These were not broken units running from France. These were experienced formations, including the 9th SS Panzer Division Hohenstaufen and the 10th SS Panzer Division Frundsberg. Major Brian Urquhart, the intelligence officer for the British 1st Airborne Corps, was alarmed. He studied the photos and the reports. He understood what it meant. Airborne troops were lightly armed. They had few anti-tank weapons and no heavy artillery. Dropping them near two SS Panzer divisions was extremely dangerous. Urquhart tried to raise the alarm. He went to Lieutenant General Frederick Boy Browning, commander of the 1st Airborne Corps, and warned him that Arnhem was not lightly held. Browning listened, but he did not want to hear it. He believed the intelligence was exaggerated. Others argued the tanks were broken down or had no fuel. Montgomery himself dismissed the reports. He believed the German forces were weak and incapable of strong resistance. He trusted his own sense of the enemy more than the evidence in front of him. The warning was noted, but it did not change the plan. There were other concerns too. The British 1st Airborne Division would land several miles west of Arnhem. The drop zones were chosen because they were open and suitable for gliders. But this meant the troops would have to march to the bridge, giving the Germans time to react. Radio equipment was also unreliable. Tests had already shown that communication between units could fail. Still, the operation went ahead as planned. On Sunday, September 17, 1944, at around 13 hours, the skies over the Netherlands filled with aircraft and gliders. It was the largest airborne operation in history. Civilians looked up in awe as parachutes blossomed across the fields. At first, everything seemed to go well. The American landings near Eindhoven and Nijmegen met light resistance. The British landings west of Arnhem were mostly unopposed. Men assembled quickly and began moving toward their objectives. But the Germans reacted faster than expected. In Arnhem, SS units recovered quickly from the surprise. Major General Wilhelm Bittrich, commander of the II SS Panzer Corps, was nearby and able to take control. German officers moved with urgency, organizing ad hoc battle groups. Tanks that were supposedly unfit for combat were rushed into action. Training units, security troops, and even naval personnel were thrown into the fight. The British advance toward Arnhem Bridge immediately ran into trouble. Only one battalion, the 2nd Battalion under Lieutenant Colonel John Frost, managed to reach the bridge on the first day. Frost's men took up positions at the northern end of the bridge by evening. They had achieved the core objective, but they were alone. Other battalions were delayed by German resistance, roadblocks, and confusion. Radio contact failed. Messages never got through. Units could not coordinate. By nightfall on September 17th, the situation was already fragile. Frost held the bridge, but German forces were closing in. The rest of the British 1st Airborne Division was scattered west of Arnhem, fighting to move forward. Major General Roy Urquhart, division commander, was cut off from his headquarters for nearly 2 days. Leadership became fragmented at the worst possible moment. Meanwhile, XX Corps began its advance from the Belgian border. At 14:35 hours, British tanks rolled forward. Progress on the first day was slower than planned. German resistance was stronger than expected. Bridges along the route had been destroyed or defended. The narrow road limited movement. Vehicles could not pass each other. Any blockage stopped everything behind it. The timetable began to slip. On September 18th, the second day, weather problems delayed airborne reinforcements and supplies. Fog over England grounded many aircraft in the morning. The British 1st Airborne Division desperately needed reinforcements, ammunition, and medical supplies. Instead, German pressure increased. At Arnhem Bridge, Frost's men were surrounded. German tanks fired point blank into buildings. British anti-tank weapons knocked out some vehicles, but losses mounted. At Nijmegen, the US 82nd Airborne Division faced its own crisis. The Waal River Bridge was heavily defended. The original plan had assumed the bridge would be taken quickly. It was not. On September 20th, after days of delay, American paratroopers crossed the wide river in canvas boats under heavy fire. Many were killed, but the bridge was finally captured. It was a brave action, but it came too late. Back at Arnhem, Frost's battalion was being crushed. By September 20th, most of the men were wounded, out of ammunition, or dead. Frost himself was seriously wounded. German forces recaptured the bridge. The key to the entire operation was lost. Yet still, Montgomery and Higher Command hoped that something could be salvaged. The rest of the British airborne troops pulled back to a defensive perimeter at Oesterbach, west of Arnhem. They dug in along the Rhine's north bank. Supplies dropped from the air often fell into German hands because of poor marking and communication. Casualties rose. The Polish brigade, dropped south of the river near Driel on September 23rd, struggled to cross to help. German fire and lack of boats made crossing nearly impossible. By September 22nd, it was clear the operation had failed. XXX Corps was still miles away from Arnhem. The airborne troops were exhausted and running out of everything. On the night of September 25th, 1944, the decision was made to withdraw. Under cover of darkness and rain, about 2,400 survivors were evacuated across the river. More than 8,000 British and Polish airborne troops were killed, wounded, or captured. Operation Market Garden had failed to achieve its main objective. The Rhine was not crossed. The war did not end in 1944. The failure had serious consequences. The northern Netherlands remained occupied through the winter, leading to famine and suffering for civilians. The German army gained time to regroup. The war would drag on for many more months. After the battle, Montgomery defended the operation. He famously claimed it was 90% successful. Many others disagreed. The core goal had failed. The warnings had been real. The intelligence had been accurate. German armoured units were present near Arnhem, exactly as reported. The decision to ignore that warning was not made by accident. It was the result of overconfidence, time pressure, and a belief that the enemy was already beaten. Market Garden failed for many reasons. The plan relied on perfect timing. It depended on a single road. It underestimated German strength and reaction speed. Communication failures crippled coordination. Weather delays disrupted reinforcements. But above all, it failed because a clear warning was set aside. When intelligence challenges belief, leaders face a choice. In September 1944, that choice led thousands of men into a battle they could not win. Today, the bridges at Arnhem and Nijmegen still stand. They are quiet reminders of ambition, courage, and cost. Operation Market Garden remains a lesson studied by soldiers and historians alike. It shows how bold plans can collapse when reality is ignored, and it proves that in war, the most dangerous enemy is not always across the river, but the confidence that tells you not to listen. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.